In this presentation, we're going to be looking at market concentration ratios. Lovely little topic. If it comes up, it will be a low marker, but it really is one of those questions where you can eat up the marks. So there are four potential market structures that we can look at, and two of those are largely theoretical: perfect competition and monopoly. And that means that on data response, you are going to be asked about probably oligopoly, but potentially monopolistic competition. Now, this is where we get into definitions. Monopolistic competition is imperfect competition among the many. Oligopoly is imperfect competition among the few. Obviously, that then raises the question of how many is many and how few is few, and concentration ratios help to answer that particular question. So we have in front of us here the market shares of the major supermarkets in the UK taken in September 2020. The definition of the N-firm concentration ratio is the combined market share of the largest N firms. So if we want the 5-firm concentration ratio, we would be adding up the market shares of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrisons and Aldi. If we want the 3-firm concentration ratio, we'll be adding up the combined market shares of Tesco, Sainsbury's and Asda. In this particular case, the market share of Tesco is 26.8, Sainsbury's 14.9 and Asda 14.5. So that gives a 3-firm concentration ratio of 56.2%. To put it another way, more than half of that market is in the hands of just 3 firms. That makes it highly concentrated, and that makes it an oligopoly. Now, there's no magic number as to determine what is a concentrated market or not. That's your interpretation. My personal interpretation is that if the largest firms have got on average, say 10% of the market each, then that makes it a concentrated market and an oligopoly. So for the 5-firm concentration ratio, I'd be looking at around about 50% or more, 4-firm 40% or more, 3-firm 30% or more, and in this particular case the largest 3 firms have got 56%. So definitely the examiners would say that that is an oligopoly. If we just look at the 4-firm ratio, again, it's the same thing. We're adding the market shares of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda and Morrisons, and that gives us a combined figure of 66.3%. Almost 2/3 of the market is in the hands of just 4 firms, so that just confirms that this is an oligopoly. So one type of question you might get is looking at what the market structure is. Another question that you might get is looking at how that market structure is changing over time. Is it more or less concentrated than it was? In 2018, the largest 3 firms had 58.1% of the market, and now they've only got 56.2% of the market. So though it's concentrated, it's more diluted than it was, because there's a lot of little players like Aldi and Lidl who are building their market share while Tesco are falling in their market share. If we go back to 2012, the 3-firm concentration ratio was 65%. So you can see that this trend of making it more diluted has been going on for quite some time now. Now, obviously, you can't get reasons for this from just numbers, but possibly it's due to the fact that these little firms, littler firms, Aldi and Lidl, they sell a relatively limited range of goods, and that means that they can focus on those. They don't focus that much on customer care. They focus on cheapness, and that is what seems to be driving these particular firms forward at the expense of the big players. Another comparison that you might make is between countries. Has one country a more concentrated sector than another? So in this particular case, let's look at the grocery market in France. If we look at the 3 big players, they are Leclerc, Carrefour and Intermarché. Together, they have a 3-firm concentration ratio of 57.5%, slightly more concentrated than in the UK, but it's virtually identical. So in France, as in the UK, the grocery market is an oligopoly. One other thing you might pick up from this is that the names are different at the top end. It isn't particularly easy for a large firm like Tesco to move into, say, the French market. However, if you look down the bottom there, you'll also see the names of Lidl and Aldi. So those are able to cross international boundaries, which is quite an interesting little idea. So finally, we're going to compare concentration in Britain and France with China. Now, if you look in China, the three largest players have only got 8.1%, 6.2% and 4.9% of the market between them. So they've only got 19.2% of the market. So that's a much more diluted market, which would make it closer to monopolistic competition. You will see that a brand headed up by Walmart are there in fourth position on 4.8%. So they are trying to move into that market. At one point, Tesco tried to move into the market. Sainsbury's have moved in relatively successfully, but they only compete online. So again, the question could be why? Well, again, the numbers don't show that, but possibly if we look at the makeup of China, it's very largely internal. It's not as well developed as the UK and France. There's a lot more inland. The communications infrastructure isn't that good. So it's going to be a lot more difficult for large firms to dominate in that particular market. However, you might find that locally, in particular parts of China, you might find that it's more of an oligopolistic structure there. And that's it on market concentration. Easy, isn't it?